I'm going to tape this so everybody can hear it. Again, this is the book we're supposed to be using for the class in spring. But they've changed the date that when it's coming out to now the end of February, which, as I said, is unacceptable. All right? So this other one that they have here is supposed to be available in January 10th. Same author and everything. So I'm going to see if there's any way I can get some freebie copies. Really, if I piss and moan enough, my hope is that he'll say, okay, it's easier just to shut you up. And see if he'll give me like a dozen copies. And I'll get one for everybody in the class. You know, when he says how many do you need, I'll have to figure out how many people might be in here, because right now I think there's only like 6 signed up. But people like Mike have not signed up yet, and there might be other people who are in this room that have not signed up yet. All right? But this is, like I said, that's unacceptable. And this was the one that had the earliest date on it. So I picked it not so much because it was the best book, but because it had the earliest release date. Now they've changed that release date. So I'm going to have to give my rep a call and see what's going to go on. But that said, this is the book. So I'll show you what it looks like right now. Okay? All right, Chapter 1, Introduction to Swift and Xcode. So you see what's in here. I'm not going to read a bit to you. These are all hyperlinked. All right? But there's some stuff in here in Objective-C. Then they get into talking about Swift, how Swift works with Objective-C or on its own, Objective-C programmers who are new to iOS and OS X, enhancing, Java programmers, etc. All right? That's pretty much what's in the first chapter. But this is all I get. Now notice I can't, it doesn't let me highlight. I can highlight that, but when I do that and I try to copy it, unless it's changed. Now that looks different than it did the other day. Well, that's good. Because if worst case, but this is going to take me 1.5 years, what I'm going to have to do otherwise, if he says, well, there's no way I can help you, then what I'm going to do is page by page, I'm going to grab this whole flippin' first chapter, even though what I'm telling you right now isn't kosher, so to speak, and I'm going to copy it to a Word file. And I'm going to give you that Word file. You understand what I'm saying? You've got to have something that you can use. I've got to have something that I can use. I'm going off of tutorials. This is not an acceptable situation. All right? So this is how I have to go through it. So here they talk a little bit about Swift. All right. Again, it has been under development since 2010. Bless you. Very few people, including many Apple insiders, were even aware of the project. So it was kind of hush-hush type of thing. And to be honest with you, I can see why. If the language takes off the way they hope it will, what you're going to see are changes, I think, in a lot of other languages like Java and some other languages to make it look more like this. Because it's easier to use. Some key features in Swift that are not in Objective-C. Well, again, I can click on that. You've already seen this type inference. We've talked about that. Switch statements where you don't need the break. We looked a little bit at tuples. We looked a little bit at closures. We mentioned with the optionals, if it ends with a question mark, that means that the value may or may not be there. If it has an exclamation point, it means a value must be there. So you've seen that. Some of the other stuff that they mentioned that's in here. Operator overloading. We'll get into that later. Overflow checking and integer calculations. So in other words, if you have a number that's like a gazillion, the program will error out instead of trying to figure out some really big number. String interpolation, hopefully you saw that when we talked about it last time. And what that is I can say something like this. So if I say var age equals 21, and then I say print line, your age is, and I put in backslash parentheses age. All right, that's going to print out your age is 21. That's interpolation right there, using the backslash and then putting the name of the variable inside of parentheses. So when they talk about interpolation, right there, that's it. All right. nested types and nested functions, I'm not even going to get into those right now because they're fairly advanced topics. All right. Well, the other thing too is, just so you know, this weekend it was very interesting. I don't want to bore you, so I'll make it quick. Saturday, my daughter says to me, the one who came down from St. Louis, she said, when I was supposed to go to that wedding last month and see Grandma and Grandpa, I was sick, so I'd like to see them. So we went over and saw my parents. My wife drove. On the way there and on the way back, I read the rest of the Swift Programmer's Guide. My God, it's terrible. I'm serious. It's really bad. There's not very much in there that's worth going over anymore. It's so convoluted, and I don't like the way that it's written at all. All right. The stuff at the very end, they've got some stuff in there that goes over. It's kind of a summary. That's pretty good. But the stuff on classes, I think if we can go over it, but I think you're going to get so unbelievably confused. I read it twice, and I was more confused the second time I read it than I was the first time. All right. So, a couple things about Swift. It's supposed to be faster. It's supposed to be less error prone. Some of the stuff that's in there, again, I'm not going to read any of this stuff. How about this? That's what I'm trying to show you, but there. Swift does not include pointers. All right, which is really a lie. It does, but it includes pointers more like Java does. Java has pointers. You just can't manipulate them yourself because it does the work for you behind the scenes. All right, and that's kind of how Swift does it too. Semicolons are optional unless you've got multiple numbers on the multiple statements on the same line. Parentheses in ifs, in whiles, in fors, and in do whiles are optional. You can create a constant, but you don't have to initialize it when you create it. So in other words, you can do this. I can say let inches in a foot. I can do that and create the constant, not give it a value. Then later on, before I use it, I can come down here and say inches in a foot equals 12. Or, as soon as I declare it, I can say equals 12. Either way is what they're saying. That's new. In the past with C, whenever you declared a constant, all right, you had to, typically using a pound define, you had to immediately initialize it. You don't anymore. You can, but you don't have to. I mean, that sounds like a big thing. It's kind of a big thing. Array subscripts are checked at execution time. If you go beyond the size of an array, all right, you'll get an out of bounds error. Automatic memory management, we'll talk about that next semester. The Swift library, notice it says it contains built-in types. And even though it doesn't say it in here, it also contains everything that's in the Objective-C library. Remember, you can keep writing Objective-C statements and use Objective-C data types inside of Swift. The reason you might not want to is the ones that are with Swift itself are easier to use. So those are the ones you probably would want to use. All right. Swift, as it says, like Objective-C, has access to the Cocoa frameworks and the Cocoa Touch frameworks. You already saw that. Even though we didn't get any further, when I had you go in there and create the new single view application project, then you went in and you did a file, new file, and you chose Swift, that's exactly what they were talking about. And you may or may not have noticed it, but the first line you automatically got into when you did that was the Foundation framework. It said import Foundation. Back in the days of Objective-C, it would say import double quote foundation / foundation.h double quote. Now it just says import Foundation. And notice it's, as it says there, it includes classes for NS object. That's why, again, you can use the NS array, the NS mutable array, the NS dictionary. You probably won't because you can use the way that they're built in Swift. But if you want to, again, this code was designed to work along with Objective-C, so you could use the two of them together. All right? So the foundation framework is basically used for data types. Then there's an AppKit data framework, rather, that's used for your GUI stuff. Okay? And notice there's Coco's AppKit. As it says, it gives you a bunch of stuff here. And there's Coco Touch's UI kit that's similar to this, but it's optimized for developing iOS app GUIs for mobile devices. So what is the difference? All right. The AppKit framework is the one that if you are creating projects for Macintosh machines. The UI kit is if you are building things for an iPhone or iPad. Get the difference? All right. But they have a lot of the same functionality. All right. So here's some of the framework, some of the stuff that's available to you. Okay. I was even thinking what I should do. I'm not going to do it today, but what I should do is I should call my rep on my phone. I should put it on speaker and let every one of you hear this. So if he tells me, well, we can't do that, I'm going to say, fine, we got 10 people here that I'd like you to tell that you can't do that, and see what he says. I'm going to let him know, so you can all give me a real PO'd looking face right now. I'm going to say that thank you, Mike, that the people in the class are really miffed because we went out there and looked, and the book is not supposed to be out until the end of February. And I said, that's unacceptable. We need something. And even this, having to page through this stuff, I'm sorry, this is too big a pain in the ass. It is. I need something I need some kind of a PDF or something like that I'm able to use. And I need you to have the same thing. And I would think, I told him, I have 8 classes this semester. All right, one doesn't have a book. That's the field study class. So that's 7 classes. Out of those 7, 6 of those 7 classes, I'm using his books. He knows I'm a good customer. And if he can't work with me, I won't threaten. I have no leverage, but I will let him know. I'll remember that when I'm ordering books for fall. That's all I can say. Because if he says, well, I'm sorry, Jeff, there's no way I can help you. But this kind of thing happened once before, not his publishing company, a different publishing company. They screwed up. They promised me books would be available on a date. They were not. All right? So what happened was they said it's okay. They said they had an advanced copy of the book electronically. They gave that to me, plus they gave me written permission to make copies of the first 3 chapters. Good. Then what they did was, as soon as the book was available, they immediately rushed me 15 copies with a note on there saying, sorry for the inconvenience, and the total was 0.00. So I gave every student one, and I had 1 extra one. All right? And I'm hoping he's willing to do the same thing. All right? I mean, I'm taping this, so you're hearing it, and I will talk to him and see what he says. Again, you can combine Swift and Objective-C in the same app. We already talked about this. So, as it says, Apple's got a lot of resources. Notice they've got a Swift blog. I don't know about you, but I've not read their Swift blog, but some of the stuff that's in there, when you look at some blogs for some of these things, they're all geeky people, and they're really hard to read because they'll sit there and they'll have arguments over stuff that you and I would consider to be stupid. Notice the sample code for the Apple WWDC, which is the Worldwide Developers Conference that they have every year in San Francisco, is located here. I have not looked at that, so we can try to look at that and see the code that's in there. Apple's book, The Swift Language, I already gave you that one. Apple makes their videos available for free, these Swift videos. Can I use Swift exclusively? The answer is yes. Notice, Apple encourages Objective-C programmers use Swift for new app development. When Swift is released, you'll be able to create entire apps in Swift, though for years to come, you'll still see Objective-C. Not only that, if you have people who have already written apps in Objective-C, they can make updates, upgrades using Swift. Again, they will work together. Again, Apple also encourages Java, C++, and C# programmers who don't know Objective-C to use Swift for new app development. All Notice, because Swift is so new, it's likely to evolve rapidly. So in other words, this is version 1 of Swift that we'll be using. Version 2 might have massive changes in it. They're kind of saying that, I guess at least, to warn you, for lack of better words. All right. Then they talk a little bit about Xcode 6. Key features in Xcode 6 and other releases. Well, you've already looked at playgrounds. All right. Notice there's something that's called REPL, Read, Eval, Print Loop, a debugging tool for interacting with a running app. All right. And you might say, well, what is that? You've already seen some of this. When we went into the playground last week, you saw when I went in there and started making changes to the values of my variables. And immediately it upgraded the playground. All right, that's the kind of stuff that they're talking about in here. All right. Interface builder, we already know about that. One of the reasons I wanted to go through this next tutorial is they talk about the interface builder's auto layout capabilities. What's really nice about auto layout is you set it up, and the idea is, ideally at least, it's a set it and forget it type of thing. All right. Says the examples that are in this book were developed using the Xcode 6 beta version. I've already used the beta version. There should be no difference between the beta version, which I believe was 6.0.1, and the one that we've got on most of these machines, which is 6.1. All right, you know how to launch Xcode already, so there's nothing new in there. Creating the playground, we did this last time. You saw that when you created the playground, and Zach, so you see it. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it at all. All right, but literally you can write a whole program in here, and as you write things over here, they appear over here. All right. And Laura, you didn't hear this, but one thing I just found out last Thursday was the version of Camtasia that I have and I bought on here that cost the school $100. Okay, we got an educational price on it. It's incompatible with OS X Yosemite, which you need to run Swift. They say, well, just go back and put an older version on, and then, no, I'm not going to do that. My hope is that, actually my biggest hope is that we get all this stuff put on these machines for spring. All right. I've got a meeting scheduled next Wednesday. They've now hired a new network engineer here. The person who's going to be doing some of this stuff, they hired somebody last week. So I've got a meeting with our CEO, or CIO, Chief Information Officer Mary Scholler, this new person, and probably Terry Prindle, and maybe even Adrian next week. I think it's Wednesday from 11 to 12. And one of the things I want to tell them is, I need this. I need you to provision these machines. I don't want to use these Macs. I don't want to go through this stuff anymore. It's going to make it so much easier if we can, and plus you can do your work from home then. All right, and I'm hoping they agree with me. All right, so they go through next and they talked about how you create a project. You've already done this kind of thing before. Again, the biggest difference is when you come in and you create a brand new project, you don't, we talked about this before, there are no more .h files, no more .m files. If you create a project and you create it in Swift, all you're going to have in it are .swift files. All right. But much of the stuff that's in here, the navigator area, etc., this is all stuff that you've seen before. All right. And for me to just keep clicking on screenshots, this is not cutting it for me. All right. Probably not for you either. All right. So like I said, I do have to get a hold of him and find out this. I don't know if you walked in and heard this or didn't hear this. That's the book we're using. They've changed the date. Look at the date. It's the end of February. It's not acceptable. They also have another Swift book that Dytel has written that's right here. That one has a date of January 10th, which would work. But I have to get a hold of my my rep and see what he says. All right. So what I'm going to do for next class, try to do. All right, we're going to do one of two things. I'm going to go back tomorrow and I'm going to rewrite that app that worked and now doesn't work. the one for the second tutorial. I'm going to go back and rewrite it. All right. After I go back and rewrite it, I'm going to give you 2 copies of it. One copy is going to be the completed copy. The other copy is going to be where we're going to go in next class. We'll be at that point where we can go in and add the GUI stuff ourselves. All right. But I just tried doing it during the break, and it didn't like anything I tried doing. All right. It just kept blowing up, and I don't know why. I don't know why it would work at home and it doesn't work right now. Sorry about that. So we'll pick it up there next time. All right.